You tell me.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome again to the Transform Your Birth podcast. And I have with me today lovely Tayla, who's going to talk about two of her births, which ultimately ended up in emergency caesareans for very different reasons. And I think it's important that we explore birth under all circumstances because you're all about to walk into the mystery and you just never know what's ahead. And stories like Taylor's today can be really helpful. So, welcome, my darling. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
So, Taylor, when you were pregnant with baby number one, how were you feeling about the idea of giving birth? Were you nervous or fearful? And then what sort of prep did you do to help you?
Yeah, baby number one, the pregnancy was, gosh, I want to say it was textbook. We got into the birth program at one of the local hospitals. We really didn't have hardly any appointments, and I was feeling really excited.
Mhm.
I did a lot of hypnotherapy, which I started probably quite early in the pregnancy. So I was listening to that most nights, looking at sort of manifesting the birth that I wanted. We did your amazing course, which really helped.
Yeah.
Um, and I sort of built up in my mind what I thought this birth was going to look like.
Yeah.
And then it actually came to the birth and it was very different.
Yeah. So tell us about that, Taylor. How did it unfold?
Yeah, so we got to about 41 and 4, I think.
Mhm.
So we did all the things they tell you to do to make the baby come. And I,
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I think they helped and that they didn't help, but we did the dates, the raspberry leaf tea, the you name it, we tried it. And then the morning of the 17th of August, my son was born. I started to have contractions. So I'd had them, not really Braxton Hicks, but I could feel things were starting to move for a couple of days prior to that.
Mhm.
And that night, I'd sort of laid awake all night. And the thing with when it's your first baby and that starts to happen is like a few nights before as it would happen, I'd get really excited. I
Yeah.
think I'd like psych myself out and I'd wake up and I'm like, oh, it didn't happen. But this night it continued to progress. At about 4 a.m., I jumped in the bath. That had been the one thing that I'd done throughout the whole pregnancy was just have baths, and I really wanted to have a water birth.
Yeah.
Um, at about 4 a.m., I jumped in the bath and started to count my contractions on the phone app. And it got to the point where they were coming closer and closer. So I called the midwife and they said to come in. We probably arrived at the hospital about 5 a.m. That morning, and things were still progressing. I still was having contractions. I was probably, I think they checked and I was maybe 2 centimeters dilated at that point.
Mhm.
And they made well, we made the choice to break my waters because I was so far along. That's actually something when I reflect upon my birth, I wish I didn't do. When
Right.
they broke the waters, there was meconium, so there was poo in the waters,
Right.
which meant that sort of that was kind of like the first point of change within that how I envisioned that birth because
Mm.
I'd manifested a lot in the birth suite and I'd really sort of picture having this beautiful water birth in this big bath. But then we got moved straight away. So as soon as there was meconium in the
Right.
waters, we had to move
Can
rooms
I
into
just
another room. Oh
I'll
yeah,
just come in there
yep.
just to explain to people why it's not always a good idea to break waters.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things we try to do when we can is to just trust the birth process, to let it unfold. And even though on TV you see, waters breaking at the beginning of labour, most of the time it happens at the end when the pressure's at its greatest, when there's, towards the end of the opening of the door and the pressure starts to build up. And what's good about, waters breaking sort of more towards the end of labour is it gives the baby an opportunity to sort of be pressured into that lovely tuck dive position where the crown of the baby's head is presenting. And when that happens, the heads mold really well and they can come through the pelvis and the birth canal a lot easier with a good head presentation. But if we break waters too early, we can predispose babies to having a malpositioned head. So they can come down really suddenly and then maybe their little forehead goes up, or they might put a hand in the way. I've seen many births that were progressing beautifully and then just got complex because of waters breaking or being broken too early. Now, what Taylor's describing is meconium in the waters, which is when the baby poos. Now, it's not common for babies to poo too much before they're born, but it can happen, and it can also be a sign of distress. But one of the other complexities with it is babies can ingest the meconium. And so meconium in the waters can mean absolutely nothing and no risk whatsoever, or it can be quite serious for the baby, particularly when they're born and their ability to breathe, if they've ingested that meconium, can really be impaired. So that's why carers always have to err on the side of um, being cautious about taking meconium in the waters seriously. They always have to be seen to be managing that risk because it can be very serious. So yeah, it brought in a level of complexity then. So what happened?
So I actually had quite a significant amount of water as well, but we got wheeled
Right.
into another room.
Yeah.
It sort of changed. If I think about my birth in like a series of like small moments, that was
Yeah.
probably one of those small moments that changed how I had been manifesting. And I always
Mm.
think about your course where you talk about you get on the airplane and you get off at a different
Location.
city location.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I always think about that when I think about Harry's birth because I don't necessarily know if I did enough prep for that change of city. So I kind of feel like that happened. We were still doing pretty well. They moved us to another room. Thankfully, it also had a bath, but it just had a bit more medical equipment in case of anything happening. And I labored in the bath for probably about 11 hours, and it was amazing. I just had my headphones in. I was in the Zen zone. It was beautiful. I actually had a midwife come in the next day, and she was like, "You wouldn't have even known you were in like you were in labor." Like
Wow.
I just was in a really, really good headspace.
In
Um,
labor land, darling, you were
yeah,
surrendered to the
I
process.
was. I think
Yeah.
there's a photo of me, and I was just like, I was relaxed. It was really good. I sort of moved around the bath. My partner was using the shower head on my lower back. It was
Mm,
really nice. It was kind of like what I had imagined labor to look like.
lovely.
Um, at about that 11-hour mark, we had a doctor come in, and I always think about your course. And I remember just in our birth plan, I'd sort of said I wanted this to happen. It was a doctor I'd never met. They came in and they started sort of mentioning the C word of caesarean
Yeah.
and trying to sort of direct and guide me towards having an epidural. And I really wish that I'd been a little bit more pushy about my partner being the person they talk to and me not hearing that because
Yeah.
once they did hear that, I feel like that's like the second moment in my birth where um, I just stopped getting out of like I started to get in my head a little bit, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
So,
One
oh,
of the
sorry.
problems when carers, particularly doctors, right? And I love doctors. I think they're amazing, and when we need them, my God, they're good.
Mm-hmm.
However, they have this habit of coming in and taking a snapshot, having to make a decision because that's what they're trained to do is make decisions around the management of pregnancies and births. And say things like, I think you're going to need to have the cesarean. I think you're going to need an epidural. And that type of communication can really bring women unstuck in terms of their confidence and their ability to surrender. What we know is that when we give women positive messaging about, you're okay, the baby's fine, then women can really surrender into it. Labor land. But when they come in and say, oh, you're going to need the epidural, what gets translated to the woman in labor is, I'm not doing a good job. I must need the epidural. And so those types of things can really take away women's confidence. So one of the things I encourage people to put on their birth preferences sheet is, please don't offer me pain relief. I know what's available. I'll ask for it if I need it.
Mhm.
Now, what was leading the doctor to thinking that you were going to need a cesarean? What were the signs?
So this is probably like the third moment.
Mm,
The midwife, unfortunately, I had this incredible midwife, but she wasn't working. So I got
mm,
my like their team, her other team member, who was she
right.
was lovely, she was great, but she'd just done a check and I'd only progressed to 4 centimeters after about 11
Mm,
plus hours. And she looked at me and she said, "Oh, you're only at 4 centimeters. That's so disappointing." And I really feel like that
wow.
just changed my mindset.
Yeah, there it
And then
is.
if you put that into the doctor coming in and saying, "You need this pain relief, we might, need to start looking at a cesarean." And I just feel like I got out of
Mm,
that place where I felt confident and I started to lose my confidence a little bit.
yeah,
Um,
understandable.
yeah, so
Mm,
about an hour after that, I could tell, and a switch just flicked in my head where I'd been in this like beautiful like space, and I was like, I've got this. And I think I fought with myself mentally for about an hour, and then I was like, all right, I'll have the epidural, because I lost that confidence.
mm, yeah.
Then I had the epidural. I laid down and it was the weirdest feeling in the world because you've been in this like well, not active labor, but I'd been in
Mm,
labor, just in this beautiful space. And all of a sudden I'm just laying on this bed. And it was really weird. I'm like, what happens now? Like, you don't feel anything, but you also don't have a baby. And it
mm,
was just the weirdest time. They sort of said, have a sleep, which I'm like, I can't sleep. I'm so excited. I want to meet this little baby. Like, I don't want to miss out on this.
mm,
So I sort of laid there. I think I drifted in and out, was talking to my partner. We were making jokes. We just kind of waited and it got to about 8 hours after that. And they also, sorry, when they gave me the epidural, they put me on a heap of Syntocin, the synthetic
yeah.
Syntocin, I think it is.
Yeah. Epidurals slow labor down. So it often
Yeah.
does come with synthetic oxytocin to keep pushing that labor ahead.
Um,
Mm,
Then my other midwife, my beautiful original midwife, they changed shifts, and she came in and she had a look and she was like, "We need to do something here. It's been nearly 20 hours. There was meconium in the waters.
mm,
Um, we have to make a call." And I remember just sort of I just had felt like a little bit disempowered, and then it kind of got to the point where the choice was taken away from me,
mm.
which was quite hard. And I don't think I necessarily dealt with that very well. And whenever I think about my birth, I always reflect on, and I'll say this a few times, but where you said you arrive in the wrong city, and I don't think in my birth prep I thought about what that would look like,
Yeah.
um, and that's something that I missed, like I missed in that birth prep step. Anyway, had an emergency cesarean, so they wheeled us out. My partner said it kind of reminded him of McDonald's drive-through because I think we actually cut off a few other women who were like meant to have an emergency, like have a cesarean in an emergency
So you
birth,
got
like
to cut the
collective.
queue, did you,
We cut
darling?
the queue.
No, out of the way. I'm coming through.
I just remember being rolled, and I was quite upset by this point. And I just remember being
Oh, yeah.
rolled, and it must have been the guy's first date, but he just ran me into like the food trolley, the end of the bed, and I was like, oh, we just have to laugh. Like this is what's happening.
Oh,
Anyway, then went in, had the cesarean. So Alex puts on my partner. Alex gets gowned up. I go in, and it's really cold. I remember it being really cold. And there's so many people in there.
mm,
And it probably wasn't the birth that I wanted, but we had our beautiful, healthy little boy.
yeah.
You could see when he came out, he had this big egg on his head because he'd been trying for like 20 hours to like come out.
So it
Um,
sounded like he had a malpositioned head, which was stopping him
yeah,
from
sorry, I
opening the
forgot to say
door.
that my uterus started to close again. So basically,
Yeah,
I got
right.
to like 4 or 5 centimeters. And then when they checked me at that 20-hour point, it was because I'd had so much Syntocin, everything started
Yeah,
to swell and like shut again. And I
yeah,
actually
yeah.
progressed back to not progress. I went back to like 3 centimeters dilated.
Yeah.
And that's when
So
they,
that's called an obstructed labor, and when babies' heads are not in those good positions, it means they can't kind of help the doorway open
Mhm.
and wedge the doorway open. And you did an incredible job, Taylor, of getting through a lot of hours of labor, and for the most part in a good headspace until people got into your head. But
Mm.
um, and then having an epidural after that and giving it a bit more time was certainly giving you a sense of, okay, this baby wasn't going to come out that way. And it was probably a really appropriate call to have a cesarean um, with the signs that the baby's head was, in a not so good position. It's a
Yeah.
huge thing to go through. And what was it like when you met him? Were you able to bring yourself into that moment? How was that?
It was, I, it was amazing because we'd waited so
Mhm.
long, but I don't know if I had the reaction that I was expecting to have.
Yeah,
He, it's hard to explain because you don't feel you've just gone through so much,
yeah,
and then you're processing that, and they give you a little baby, and you look at them, and you like you love them, you love them,
yeah, of
but
course.
it's I don't know, it's just you're processing it, and I think it took me maybe like a couple of days, and I've actually talked to other mums about this, and
Mm.
sometimes it's okay to you love them and never mean I don't like I love my
Yeah,
son so much,
of
but it takes
course.
a few days to adjust because you've just gone through
Yeah,
something.
that's right.
But now you've just given a little baby and you're like, all right, here you go. Like
Yeah.
keep them
I
alive.
think
Good job.
I think that's a really important point to pick up on. And I try to do this in my classes as well. When a baby lands, so much of our ability to adjust to that moment of meeting for the first time will depend on the type of birth that we have. And although, having said that, some women can have very complex birth and then be absolutely have a big rush, and some women can have a straightforward, uncomplicated birth and not feel much yet.
Yeah.
So the point I'm making is this: don't ever, ever judge the way you feel when you meet your baby for the first time, because, well, for starters, don't underestimate it. It's a biological necessity. The survival of that baby depends on you falling in love with it. And so the urge and the biological inclination is very strong, because without that, babies don't survive. But it's not always a big rush when you meet your baby for the first time, and particularly, after a pregnancy, which can seem like it goes on forever, and then birth, which sometimes can feel like it goes on forever, and then they're finally here. Your first response can be, oh, thank God that's over, and women can be reeling from the experience that they've just had, and they're not feeling much for a while, and that can go on for days and even weeks. But don't underestimate it. I've watched women who've struggled with their bonding, and yet they still continue to meet the needs of that baby. And then over time, it can be a slow burn, but it does typically happen. It's a very strong biological necessity. So, darling, that was a huge journey that you went through. How were you feeling when you were pregnant with baby number two? And what sort of decisions did you make as a result of that?
So baby number two, if you think about baby number one as like textbook, we just skated through, we hardly saw the doctors, we were in the birth program.
Yeah,
Baby number two was like, I don't know what happened. I was so excited. We were so excited. We were extremely lucky with both boys that we fell pregnant quite quickly, which is like, we're very, very lucky and grateful.
yeah,
Um, so we sort of decided we'd try for baby number two. It had been 18 months since baby number one was born, and we tried for number two. We felt quite quickly. I was really excited. I had been working with and talking to the doctors about having a VBAC and had started planning for that. I'd started like listening and doing a lot of like manifesting and hypnobirth and like got out all the old. I'm pretty sure I have some of your recordings that I listened to.
yeah,
uh,
beautiful.
got out everything, started doing the work. was really excited. I think there was a fundamental step that I missed between the boys, and that was my own personal rehab and making sure that I was strong enough. And I looked after my body, and I can't, like, if I could go back and do that again, I would 100% be making sure, like, go and see the women's physio, look after your core, look after everything, make
Mm.
sure everything works again, because especially when you have babies that close together,
Yeah.
um, there are so many components that I think I took for granted and just assumed it would be the same, and it was definitely not.
Yeah. Yeah.
We got to about, I think this pregnancy, I was very tired. I also had a toddler. I was
Mm.
very tired. We got to about 5 months pregnant, and I had my son brought RSV home. So I had RSV, which knocked me, and I just got really sick from it. And I started to take like a Ventolin and a Preventer, and I just couldn't understand why. It would have been about a month. And I was like, why am I still so sick? And I can't breathe properly. And you know, when you like, there's a baby and it's all a bit squished and everything feels a bit squished.
Yeah.
And I woke up one morning and I couldn't feel my hands and my feet. I could not feel my hands and my feet. And I was like, I need to go to the hospital. Like, I've prioritized looking after everyone else, and I kind of forgot to look after myself.
Yeah.
And it was probably like 5 a.m. And I said to my partner, I'm just going. Like, I don't feel, I just in my heart feel something's wrong. So I went to the
Mm.
hospital. They nearly let us go home. They gave me more Ventolin. They said, look, it's just the RSV, it needs to just work through. And then this amazing doctor from emergency came in and she's like, I just want to run this one more test before you go.
Yeah.
And I had it wasn't a CT scan, but it's like the equivalent of a CT scan you can have when you're pregnant. So you still get the radiation flush, but it's a little bit less.
Right.
It's pregnancy safe, well, pregnancy safe. And they found two large blood clots on my lungs. So pretty much, if you think about your lungs, the bottom of both my
Mm.
lungs were covered in these blood clots, which
Yeah.
explained why I couldn't breathe very well at all. And then I guess from there, the trajectory of my pregnancy and birth changed significantly.
Yeah.
Um,
Blood clots can be very, very nasty. So they've got to pay a lot of attention to that. So, how did that change the management of your pregnancy?
from that point, we stayed within the public system for probably a month. And then
Hmm.
and this was my personal choice, I decided we had the health insurance to do it as well, to move into the
Mm.
private, just for that continuity and to know we had one
Yeah.
obstetrician. I just got a little bit nervous. And look, we've birthed in the public system. It's incredible. It's amazing that it exists within
Yeah.
Australia. Like, there's nothing, I can't fault it. But I'd gone into a couple of appointments and I'd see a different obstetrician every time, because it
Mm.
also changed from me seeing midwives to now I have to see obstetricians. I
Yeah.
also had to start clexane, so blood thinning injections twice a day, to treat the blood clot as well.
Yeah.
So I moved into private, found a private obstetrician, and really liked them. Um, Continued to have that monitoring. Probably got scans like every fortnight,
Hmm.
instead of like you normally get your 12-week scan, your 20-week, and then unless you pay for it, you pretty much
Yeah.
don't get a scan. Um, and had an elective cesarean. So what that means when you're on blood thinners is that you have a window of time where you stop the blood thinners. So it's about
Hmm.
like 24 hours or 12 hours before you have the cesarean, and then you restart the blood thinners as soon as you're approved, because you're also your risk factors increase post major surgery as well
Yeah.
for blood clots. So we gave birth at the private hospital. The elective cesarean was so different. I think I just got to a point mentally where I just had to accept, I'm not going to get that natural birth that I like yearned for. But this is the way that I can keep me safe, and the baby can be
Yeah.
safe and arrive safely. So I just had to sort of accept it. And I think I accepted it better than I did when it was an emergency cesarean.
Yeah. Yeah.
I sort of just had to do that mindset shift. And I was
Yeah.
like, look, we got off the plane. It's the wrong city, but we're going to have a great holiday.
Yeah. Yeah. You make the most of whatever situation you're in. And I think it's important. Like, I always encourage women to have a bit of a game plan around cesareans,
Mhm.
because you know, you might decide, I use the metaphor of traveling to Italy. You decide to have a holiday in Italy, and then the plane starts to get faulty, and you end up in New Delhi, India, from Italy to India. And we don't always end up where we want to be. And as part of the mind, and the preparation of the mind, it's important to have a bit of a game plan around cesareans and how you would manage that if you found yourself in that situation. And little things can make a big difference to a cesarean section. Things like, could you lower the curtain so we could see the birth? Instant skin to skin unless medically indicated. Could we please have some degree of delayed cord clamping? Could you please not announce the sex? We'd like to find out ourselves. These are often little things, but they can make a profound difference to that experience. What do you think it was about that experience, Taylor, that made it better for you than first time round?
It was it was actually beautiful. Like it was a beautiful birth, and I have this video of meeting
Nice.
Nicholas for the first time.
Yeah.
And yeah, I really did. I've struggled with the first cesarean, but the second one, I thought it was really beautiful. It was weird because you go in and you're not
Mm.
in like in labor, and you put
Yeah.
on your gown, and it's very like that to me was like, this feels like we're going to the shops. Like
Very
that was
different.
a, yeah,
Yeah.
very, very different experience. And then we sort of wheel down, and you're waiting, and then you go into the room and you hold the pillow, and they put the spinal in, and then you lay back. Um, you lay back, and I got a little bit sick. So
Mhm.
I was having flushes. So they just like I'm pretty sure I had a cold compress on. But the beautiful thing was they knew that I was scared. Like this was
Yeah.
not the birth that I wanted. I did have a little
Yeah.
bit of fear around it. And I think I had fear because of the other medical components that were going on. And they let me put
Yeah.
in my meditation. So I pretty sure I actually listened to your voice when I
Oh,
was
that's
getting
nice.
my
I was at the
spinal.
birth. How
Yeah.
lovely.
And then they
Yeah.
let me listen to that and get into my own head and my own
Mm,
mindset. But
good.
before they put the spinal in, and then they
Yeah.
laid me down, and I could listen to the music, and I could sort of zone out, and I could just not think about what was happening because that was my choice. Like I didn't. I
Yeah.
some women will have the curtain drawn down, and they'll be more involved. But this was
Mm.
just how I needed to get through it.
You needed to go inward. And I'll often say that to women, preparing for cesarean is, if it's too much with seeing all these people or it's too loud, then block off some senses. Either close your eyes or put your audio tracks in, which can just help keep you in your own little space and utilize your mind to stay connected to Bubby and connected to yourself rather than being too overwhelmed by what's going on around you. You don't need to know what they're doing. That's their job. Your job is to just be as calm and relaxed as you can be.
Yeah, definitely. I
Mm,
think breathing was a big component that I use. And
yeah,
breathing, I did forget to mention this, but in my first birth, that those 11 hours that of me just laboring in the bath, breathing got me through that. Like
yeah.
I can't remember what it's called. We breathe through and then out through your mouth. There's a name for it. It's like the yoga.
Use eye breathing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that got me through,
yeah,
and then I could utilize those tools as well in the elective cesarean. So yeah, just making sure I was focusing on my breathing. I just had noise cancelling headphones in, and I was just focused on that. And then probably about, gosh, halfway through, I mean, cesareans don't, you're not in there for very long, and the baby's out.
yeah,
Halfway through, I was like, I feel like I can take part in this. I'm not scared. I took my headphones out.
yeah.
I was talking to my partner, and then the little bub was there, and they lifted him up, and he did the big wail.
Which is a good sign.
Yeah, and then they took him into the other room, and I feel like I'd worked through my own fears, and I felt like I could take part in the birth from there, and it was beautiful.
Mm.
They took him, they did all the fobs and things they need to do, and then they looked over, and we had this. I think she was the anaesthetist nurse. She took these incredible photos of my birth,
Oh, nice.
and she just took this beautiful video of me meeting Nicholas for the first time, and he had his little
Oh,
head next to me, and it was just, yeah, it was a really beautiful
beautiful.
experience. And then we went
And
into,
what
oh,
was the
sorry,
bond like? What was the bonding moment like when you
so
met him?
different,
Yeah, tell us about
so
that.
different. With Harry, and I hate saying this, and I would never I would hope you'd never hear this or ever reflect on
Oh,
this, but
it's
like
no reflection.
I didn't want to hold him. Like I was,
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if I was scared of him, but I did not want to hold him when he was born. I didn't. I
Mm,
said to my partner, I was like, I don't want to hold him. Just take him away from me. Like
mm,
I just couldn't. And I remember that first night, I just really struggled to bond with him. I was like, just put him in the little not Tupperware container, whatever the thing's called,
yeah. The crib or
the
whatever.
crib.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't want to. But with Nicholas, I was like, I felt, I don't know if number two is different as well, but I was like, I just felt this like amazing connection with him. I was just so proud of us both for getting through this because it had
Mm,
been a hard pregnancy.
yeah.
Um, and yeah, we went into recovery, and I was trying to breastfeed him right away, and even that was different. I'd like worked with a lactation consultant prior. I knew a little
Mm,
bit more, and I just cuddled him, and I just had this beautiful, and that was probably the connection I didn't necessarily have with Harry.
yeah.
And but yeah, I couldn't put him down. I was just obsessed
Mm,
with him.
that's
He smelled
beautiful.
so good.
Yeah, the smell of a
Oh my
newborn, you
gosh.
almost want to lick them. They're just incredible. But
Yeah.
I know the answer to this, but given these two very different bonding experiences,
Mm-hmm.
is that reflected in any shape or form with your love for both of your children?
Oh my gosh, no. I'm
No,
obsessed with
exactly.
both of
And
them.
that's the point I want to make. Even if your bonding isn't ideal, like Taylor's was first time round, it doesn't define that experience and it doesn't define that relationship. Okay. It's just a moment in time. It's a window of opportunity, your first meeting. And if it's not ideal, or if there's separation, or you don't feel connected to the baby, don't worry. It's not a window that closes and that's it. You've screwed them for life. It's far from that. Bonding is a lifelong experience. You are always reconnecting and rebonding with your children as they grow and change and their needs change. So, yeah, I want to make that point very clear. So, Taylor, you went through two very big experiences bringing these babies in. What did you learn about yourself as a result of that?
That women are incredible. Number
I'll
one.
drink to that.
We truly are
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh, we just persevere. There's just like this resilience within women that just like, because at the end of the day, I don't know, you can't quit, you can't stop, you just have to keep going.
Yeah. Very
And I
true.
feel like you find this inner strength that sometimes you didn't even know you had.
Mm,
Um, and I also, what have I learned? Other things I've learned is that to forgive, sort of forgive yourself if maybe the birth that you wanted, not always forgive yourself, but if the birth that you wanted didn't happen,
mm,
I don't think the word is forgive, it's sort of to process that and take the time to sit with that. And then
mm.
um I think you can do like a birth debrief and you can
Yeah.
work through what's happened. But yeah, don't don't sit in those feelings, like work through them. Would be
Mm,
one thing I did learn. Every birth is different. Gosh, if I look at both my pregnancies, they're like chalk and cheese.
mm,
Harry was, I mean, yes, they did end in cesarean, but my first son's pregnancy was just, I was so healthy. There was nothing, there was
mm.
no indicator. And even in my second pregnancy, the doctors kept saying, how did this happen the second time? Because you just had nothing that would indicate this would happen
Yeah.
from that first pregnancy. But yeah, I mean, gosh,
Mm.
there's so many lessons.
Very, very interesting. Birth puts you on a ride. You can have ideals and you can have visions around your birth. And I always encourage people to create a vision around their birth because the mind moves towards what you focus on, and what you focus on, you fuel. So imagining yourself as dealing with the contractions, welcoming the sensations, having a vaginal birth or having a cesarean birth, like you give your mind the opportunity to play through those two scenarios can be very, very helpful. Um, and start to train the mind, not to create a birth that looks like X, but to actually encourage or to train you to respond a certain way to your birth process. That's the power of visioning. But as Taylor's story highlights so beautifully, you can have all the best intentions, you do the right courses, you do the practices, and you can still end up on a path that's very different to what you imagine the birth to be. But no birth is ever in vain. No experience is without opportunities to learn, to grow, to expand, to become wiser, to become bigger. And sometimes it's the process of letting go of control and those ideals that is what we actually need when it comes to parenting. Because I really do believe sets you up for parenting. And the fact that we can't control it is really a bit of a hint that guess what? You can't control your kids. You can manage them, you can encourage them, you can do a lot of things, but they're going to be who they're going to be. And the birth sets you up for that. So to let go of birth being a certain way, and as Taylor said beautifully, to accept, I guess, and allow yourself to let go of those ideals around what you would have liked, to seeing it, the beauty of what actually unfolds as a result of your experience. And Taylor's learnt a lot in that process of giving birth. And she's just getting her second one out of bed with beautiful little
Sorry.
fellow. It's
He's just
lovely. Hello, little one. Oh, what a gorgeous face.
oh,
Very,
now
very
he's gonna try
precious.
and talk to you.
Yeah. So Taylor, thank you so much for sharing those experiences and, the unpredictable nature of things like blood clots and things that can come in from left field, can be really challenging to work with. But don't ever assume you don't have what it takes to get through that. We are so much more than what we think we are. And I think Taylor demonstrated that beautifully through bringing her own two babies into the world. So thank you, everybody, for listening. It's been lovely to join you again this week, and we'll see you again. Bye for now.